Today's the last Sunday that we're going to be talking about our theme, which is taking a recess from the doom and gloom economy, which our politicians do not want to let us do. And so I'll be talking about letting down your net today. During the past weeks, we've been exploring the idea that when we keep our consciousness open to abundance, we shall be abundant regardless of what the experience is out there, what's going on around us in the world. In fact, when we keep our consciousness open to abundance, we can be a catalyst for change in our economic situation. So we're going to conclude our theme today by going deeper and even deeper into the spiritual practices that support our living the 10 Commandments, which we talked about earlier in the month, of abundance. And if you don't know what I mean by that, you can go online to our website. I have the talks. They are uploaded. I'm a couple weeks behind, but the rest of them are there. And truly walking the talk so as far to create the abundance of a flow of good in our lives. So how do we do that? Well, how about letting down our nets? For those of you who came from Christian backgrounds, you know what this phrase means, don't you? Have you heard the story of Jesus when they were out in the boat and they were complaining because they hadn't caught any fish? Well, I know that not everyone had a religious upbringing, but let me share with you the story, and it's in Luke, and I've quoted a lot from Luke this month. But Jesus was at the height of his ministry, and he was very, very popular. Hordes of people were coming to see him, and since he's somewhat of a celebrity, people wanted to be really close to him. They wanted to touch him, right? And on this particular day, he was surrounded by a throng of people that were closing in on him. And I'm thinking he might have been feeling a bit claustrophobic, and he was near the shore, and the way he saw of escaping was by stepping into the boat of Simon Peter. So that's what he did. And here's what it says in Luke. And so he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little from the land. And he sat down and taught the multitudes from the boat. When he'd stopped speaking, he said to Simon, "Launch out into the deep and let down your nets for a catch." But Simon answered him and said, "Master, we've toiled all night and caught nothing. Nevertheless, at your word, I will let down the net." And when they had done this, and when they had caught a great number of fish, and their net was breaking, they signaled to their partners in the other boat to come and help them. And they came and filled both the boats so much that they began to sink. And this was called a miracle. But was it a miracle or simply a spiritual truth being made visible? In order to experience the fullness of life, in order to receive an abundance of all that we desire and deserve as perfect children of God, we must cast our nets deeply into the sea of receptivity. And that's using a phrase from Dr. Holmes. Simon and the other fishermen had been casting their nets out to no avail, right? They'd been throwing and getting nothing back. But how deep? How deep had they been going? Obviously, not deep enough. So how deep are you casting your spiritual net? Well, the answer to that question lies in the results. Are your nets coming back full, or are they coming back empty? And this is absolutely the time to cast your nets as deeply as you can. If our nets are not coming back as full as we would like them, let me suggest 2 solutions. Perhaps it's time to deepen your net of faith, and perhaps it's time to deepen your net of spiritual practices. So let's look at the first one. Let's look at deepening your faith. So deepening your faith in what? Faith is in what we discussed last week. What did we talk about last week? It's the Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. And it's really important to listen to this closely, because it's God's desire for you to have only good, absolute and only good. God's desire for you is absolute and only good. This morning, release anything that suggests that God's will towards you has anything to do with suffering, that God punishes in any way, because God never punishes. It's the law that works, cause and effect. And have faith and know that God's good is contained within every situation. Every single situation. You heard the story of the man who, came across a room that was filled with horse poop, and he exclaimed he was so happy because he just started digging away. He says, "There's got to be a pony in here somewhere," right? We know that there's good in every single situation. Do you ever read the cartoon, the Get Fuzzy cartoon? that's in our paper. I don't know if you read Get Fuzzy.
Newspaper cartoon.
In this one, Rob says to his dog, Satchel, "Crud, I forgot I have to work next weekend." "Well, at least my boss won't be in." "Every cloud has a silver lining, doesn't it?" And Satchel says, "What does that mean?" Rob says, "Like how even in a bad situation, there's always some good." And Satchel says, "It's like the old dog expression." Rob says, "What's that?" Satchel says, "For every trip to the vet, there's a ride in the car." See, even dogs know how to look at things a good way, right? Stephen Lane Taylor, in his great book called Row, Row, Row Your Boat, A Guide for the Living in the Divine Flow, said, "Everything in the end is good. If it's not good, then it's not the end." Wow. So, say this with me. God's desire for me is absolute good. God's desire for me is absolute good. God makes no judgment about whether it's spiritual enough or whether it's too material. We've had some discussions in our Science of Mind classes about what it was okay to treat for. And treatment is our affirmative prayer. That's just a way of accepting that what's already been given to us. And so we would say, gosh, is it okay to treat for a parking space? Is that spiritual enough? Shouldn't we be treating for something bigger and better? And I think it's not a problem to treat for the little things to build up your faith and realize that, wow, there really is a power. And it creates a way of being. And then pretty soon you're not even consciously thinking about it. Those parking spaces just appear because you just know. You just know that wherever you go, there's a space for you. And it's good. So if the desire is planted in your heart and it is life-affirming in capital letters, Ernest Holmes said, harms no one, since that is so subjective, I like to say life-affirming, then it is God's desire for you to be, do, or have it. So if it's life-affirming and harms no one, then it is God's desire, because if you are God in expression, then your desire is God's desire, right? It's a tricky one when people say, well, I don't want to surrender to God's will, but God's will is your will if it's life-affirming and harms no one. Or Emma Curtis Hopkins in Scientific Christian Mental Practice says God is life. Thus, we are to have confidence in life as the outcome. Life will win. We must be firm on this point. God is truth. We must believe in the truth about good, that the good will always act. We must be sure of it. Well-placed faith is the faith that says, yes, there is a power for good in the universe. And Holmes takes it a little bit further. He says, there is a power for good in the universe, and you can use it. So Ernest Holmes says, when we learn to trust the universe, we shall be happy, prosperous, and well. We must learn to come under the divine government and accept the fact that nature's table is ever filled. Never was there a cosmic famine. God is always God. No matter what our emotional storm or what our objective situation may be, there is always something hidden in the inner being that has never, ever been violated. We may stumble, but always there is that eternal voice forever whispering within our ear, that thing which causes the eternal quest, that thing which forever sings and sings. This is the thing itself. So do you have faith in these words of Ernest Holmes the same way that you have faith that tomorrow the sun will rise and that the next breath of air we take will be available? That's a question. And if you cannot honestly say yes to that today, then today is the day. Today is the day to set your intention to develop that kind of faith, to believe his words. How? How do we do that? How do we develop that faith? By consciously choosing to have just a little more faith than we have right now. Just a little bit more, stretching it just a little bit more in the goodness of all of life. By choosing today to have just a little more confidence that there is a power for good surrounding you, in you, as you, desiring only for the fullness of who you are to express. Choosing today to open your consciousness just a little more to the idea and then watch what happens. Because I love the saying, they go, oh, well, seeing is believing, but we turn it the other way. Believing is seeing. We believe first. We take that leap of faith. So are you ready this morning to cast your net into this deeper level of faith? You ready?
Sure.
Okay, good. Then you're also ready to cast your net into a deeper level of spiritual practices, right? So what does it mean? What does it mean to have a deeper level of spiritual practice? You get to help me create this part of the message. What are some of the spiritual practices that have served you to deepen your abundance consciousness and experiences?
Meditation.
Okay.
Affirmations.
Affirmations.
Meditations.
Meditation. Okay.
Becoming aware of what we do have.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Oh, that is awesome. Yeah.
Attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude. It's fabulous. Meditation, affirmative prayer, treatment, affirmations, visioning. Who does treasure mapping? You ever cut out pictures? And who's cut out a picture and put it right there on the refrigerator and you stare at it every morning? Yeah. Rob was here. He put a boat. He had his boat. You know what? He didn't come to church last week because he was on his boat. And I wrote him back. He texted me and I said, have a blessed time. This warm weather only lasts for a little while. Yeah. Enjoy. Right. Visualization, surrender. And of course, there's always tithing, which is something we started, we did a great course on tithing.
When she was really so young, she had no money and she would send the money to a church in Wisconsin.
Unity in Missouri.
Unity in Missouri.
I think I got she did it. She sent the money to people she didn't know and she didn't have.
I was tithing my unemployment check.
I love it.
23.
Yeah. Only time I was unemployed was 6 months of my life.
Well, there's a story about a young man who went to seminary and he graduated, but he wanted some real-world experience before going into the active ministry. So he decided to enroll in the police academy. And during one of his exercises, his instructor said to the class, "Tell me, how do you quickly disperse a crowd?" And this young seminary student shot up his hand and with great confidence he said, "You take up a collection." And they're gone. So there you have it. 4 weeks on how not to let the appearance of the floundering economy affect you. And remember, what's out there is just results of what the collective consciousness and what we've thought individually yesterday.
I'm telling you, there's people getting rich off this economy.
Because they don't believe it. They don't believe it. Yeah. And there's people when the Great Depression happened that got rich off of that too. So stick with these ideas, stick with these practices, don't leave them, even if things look scary, and that's the hardest thing to do. Because when things are going great, it's so easy to follow this, isn't it? Isn't it easy to just go, yeah, God is good, this is awesome, everything's,
things are going so great, sometimes you can forget to do that.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. And it's when things start, shifting, that's just a reminder, wow, okay, because if everything's a mirror of what's inside of here, it's just a reminder to get back into alignment, right? One of my favorite passages from The Science of Mind, and this is why I quote it often, is on page 282, and it says, and these are my parting, well, actually,
Is that the chapter we're reading this week?
yeah, and you know what?
Yeah.
I didn't bring the book, or did I? No, I left it at home, so I cannot quote it to you. That was my mistake. I took it out of my bag. But, so, read 282 in The Science of Mind when you get home. That's your assignment today. So these are the parting words for you today. Stay with the one and never deviate from it. Never leave it for a moment. Nothing else can equal this attitude. To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. And this is The Science of Mind. When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. When things look the worst is the best time to work, the most satisfying time. The person who can throw himself with complete abandon into that limitless sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will always receive the greatest reward. Hence the folks that are making good of this economy, right? And so it is.
I always say when you
Namaste.
hit bottom, there's nowhere else to go.
Well,